What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to do another full story video. This full story video is really more about the idea of post-Onslaught for the X-Men, because with the whole idea of the Avengers, the Fantastic Four no longer being around because those heroes had disappeared over into a different reality, but also the fact that you had Charles Xavier get arrested is kind of like, okay, what's going to happen to the X-Men now post-Onslaught? Like, what is the actual direction for comics at that time for Marvel Comics when it came to the X-Men? Not X-Force, not X-Factor, just the X-Men. And so I'm going to give you guys a few storylines that took place right after the whole Onslaught crossover. I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the X-Men. And so we're going to pick up with Wolverine issue number 106, but also the annual that came out in 1996 as well. Now, here's the thing, because for me, I really love the annual story more, but we also have to cover 106 as well because it kind of shows something special happening between Wolverine and Elektra. And let me explain. See, it all began back in Fatal Attractions. You see, back in Fatal Attractions, you had Magneto rip off the adamantium off the bones of Wolverine. Now, when he did that, we had also learned later on that when it came to Charles Xavier, he had discovered that apparently Wolverine's mutation was supposed to turn him into a feral beast. But when it came to adamantium being bonded on his bone, thanks to Weapon X, it has stopped that process. But with Magneto basically ripping off the adamantium, the process was able to continue again. And so unfortunately, it was Logan for a good while there, slowly turning into a feral beast-like character. Now, for Elektra and Stick, they were in his corner. They were kind of like, hey, listen, you cannot turn into an animal. You are still a man no matter what. They were able to keep him on the right track. And so because of that, Elektra being in his corner kind of helped build a bond between these two characters. And it really shows in issue number 106 because as we get into the opening pages of this book, we do pick up with Wolverine and also Elektra, who are currently in the forest. Now, at first, they are completely surrounded by all these wild wolves. And it does look like these wolves might attack Elektra, but also Wolverine. But of course, for Wolverine, he has a way to bond with these creatures. And we kind of find out he knows these wild animals. He knows how to talk to them and play with them and bond with them. And so for Elektra, she kind of realized that even though with her being in his corner and trying to help him stay a man and not turn into a wild beast, that the animal side of Wolverine is not completely gone. But at the same time, that's not a bad thing because right now he's using that side to his advantage. But after that moment, you then have Wolverine take Elektra over to where him and Silver Fox used to live at together. Now remember, those two characters, they were madly in love. Wolverine was really heartbroken when he lost her. But of course, every single year, he comes back here to the one spot as a way to respect her. Now, for Wolverine, she's not the only person that he loved. There was also Mariko. There was Jean Grey. There was also Heather. But is Wolverine saying like, listen, I have spots for all those characters that I loved in the past who were basically taken away from me. But the thing is, this is not Logan saying like, hey, listen, I came here or I brought you here to show you what I do every year. No, it's him saying like, listen, I am not scared to fall in love again because once you show fear, that begins the process of death. And for Logan, he's not ready to die yet. And so, of course, it's him right now keeping his heart open for the possibility of falling in love again. But it's also kind of like, hey, it's Logan right now saying, I showed you my animal side earlier. Now it's me showing my human side. And so now we see the two characters on a plane heading over to Greece. Now, before I explain why they're heading over to Greece, it's Elektra right now kind of telling us that she feels kind of weird around Wolverine, but not in a bad way, because for her, when she looks at him and her, they are two characters who are completely different from one another. For Elektra, she is an ex-assassin who was brought back to life and who's right now trying to save her soul again. But for Wolverine, he's a man who's a protector of a dream the X-Men have, but also he's being cursed by his own mutation. Now, with that being said, is her also kind of realizing that Logan kind of reminds her a lot about Matt Murdock, the man she loved in the past. But right now, it's Logan being the first person outside her family that she's finally bringing home. Now, when it came to an earlier storyline, you had Elektra kind of tell us this story about all these different characters who were in her life when she was growing up in Greece. One of those characters was a guy known as Stavros, and I really hope I said his name correctly. Now, for Stavros, he was the gardener, but with him, she had learned a lot of different things about life, but also about gardening as well. Now, there was a point in time where there were two assassins. One of them was pretty young, and his name is Theo. When it came to Elektra, she convinced Stavros to not kill off Theo, and matter of fact, took him in as his own son. And so ever since that moment, Theo and Stavros kind of had this father and son bond. But now you have all these characters, plus Stavros and Theo, meeting Wolverine and kind of realizing that if she brought him home, that means he must be something special. But after all of that, you then have Elektra, Stavros, Wolverine, and Theo sit down and have drinks with one another. Now, for Stavros, he had learned that Wolverine is Canadian. And so it reminded him about a guy he fought alongside with back in the war. Of course, that guy's name was the Canadian as well. But here's the thing. That was Logan in his past. But because you have Logan slowly mutating, unfortunately, he does not look like what he did in the past. So for Stavros, when he looks at Logan, he's kind of like, oh, I had this friend and he was a cool guy. He was taller than you and didn't look as ugly as you. But it's him kind of like, man, if only I could see him today, but not realizing that he's currently talking to the Canadian friend right now in the present day. But for Elektra, she's kind of like, I never heard you ever talk about the war. This is interesting. But you did have Stavros go ahead and just change the subject just like that, because he does inform her that how they've been trying to hunt down the 6 people who had killed off her father. Now they found most of them, but one is still alive. But for Elektra, with her being with Stick, being with other people in her life, she has moved on from the idea of looking for revenge. It's now her just trying to be at peace. And for me, the ending of this issue was kind of like, man, could have done more with this. But we do see that for Stavros and also Theo, they had the last guy who was responsible for the death of Elektra's father. But of course, he let him go. Because Stavros, he's kind of like, if Elektra said that she had now officially moved on trying to get revenge against the guys who killed off her father, then we no longer have the right to try to kill this guy. Now, this guy might run to the cops, but you didn't have Logan stop him on the outside and say, listen, if you tell the cops about those boys down there, I will hunt you down and kill you myself. And then the guy says, yeah, you know what? Fine. I won't tell the cops anything at all. And he just runs away. But yes, Logan knew the gardener that Elektra had growing up. And so this leads us over to Wolverine Annual 1996. Now, with this annual, it's also bringing back a few characters we have not seen in a tad bit. Like, for example, as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we see Wolverine right now paying respect to Mariko, one of his many lovers. Now, while doing that in Japan, he's then confronted by the Silver Samurai. You see, for the Silver Samurai, he was the brother to Mariko, one of the many lovers of Wolverine. Now, for both siblings, they had belonged to the Yashida clan. Now, the clan was technically this criminal empire in Japan, but when it came to Mariko, when she had took over the clan, her main goal was to turn the clan into a better group of people, away from the criminal empire they were in the past. But the problem was that when she died, the Silver Samurai took over and brought the clan back into its old ways again, being this criminal empire all over again. Now, with that being said, for Wolverine and Silver Samurai, there is a lot of bad blood between the two characters. And so for Wolverine, he wants to know why in the world the Silver Samurai is here right now at the grave of Mariko. Now, for the Silver Samurai, he's not really here to battle against Logan. Instead, for the Silver Samurai, he's really here more saying like, listen, I gotta tell you two things. Thanks to the whole idea of Onslaught, what happened back in New York, you now have more and more humans hating on the mutant race. Now, technically, he's right, but right now, most of that hatred is coming out of America because that huge event happened in New York. But other countries right now don't truly hate their mutants. Matter of fact, we saw that in Excalibur where they said, listen, right now, the humans of the United Kingdom, they don't hate their mutants. But sooner or later, the UK will begin to turn their backs on the mutant race as well. But for Japan, they're kind of like right in the middle where it's like, you might have a few people out there who hate mutants, but not all of them. But it's also Silver Samurai saying like, I came here to tell you what happened to Sunfire. But now we have to switch over to, well, Bastion. Now for Bastion, at this point in time in Marvel Comics, he's right now trying to get the whole idea of Operation Zero Tolerance started up, where they'll then be able to go after mutants across the world. Now, for Bastion, he already has a few countries on his side. Only a few, because some countries have not agreed yet, and Japan is one of those countries. But Japan is a very proud nation. They're kind of like, listen, we can handle all types of situations on our own. We don't need your help at all. But for Bastion, it's kind of like, no, listen, you do need my help. For the human race, it's no longer time for us to be split by race or religion or culture. It's now time for us to come together and go after the mutant race. But you didn't have Bastion say, listen, you guys believe that you have your powerful weapon, better known as the Red Ronin. But the problem is that weapon right now technically does not belong to you. You see, the Red Ronin is kind of like this Megazord that basically Japan has. Now, originally, it was supposed to be used as a way to protect the country. And matter of fact, they use it as a way to fight against Godzilla. But over time, it would also be used as a way to help Godzilla to fight against other creatures. Now, over time in Marvel Comics, this huge robot will be used by other companies across the Marvel universe. But around this time in Marvel Comics, it is currently being controlled by a company known as, and I'm going to literally butcher the name, but Fujikawa Electronics. They're the ones right now has their hands on the Red Ronin robot. Now, outside the company building, we do see another character there known as Yukio. Now, Yukio is also one of many Wolverine's lovers, but it's her right now kind of listening in on what they're talking about when it comes to Red Ronin, but she also kind of tells us that there are many people out there who pay a lot of money to be able to get their hands on the giant robot. Now, as we do switch over to Wolverine and also Silver Samurai, we're seeing the two characters getting ready to break into this prison to basically break out Sunfire. Now, the reason why he's locked up is actually a callback to X-Men issue number 25. In that one issue alone, basically part of Fatal Attractions, we have saw Magneto release this powerful EMP across the entire world, of course, hitting Japan as well. Now, with that EMP, it also hit Sunfire. Now, for Sunfire, it basically made him lose control of his ability. And so with that happening, he did cause some serious damage in Japan. because of that, he got locked up for it. And so now for Silver Samurai and Wolverine, their main goal is to get Homeboy out of there. And so you do have our two heroes being able to make their way over to Sunfire. Now we also have to remember that the Silver Samurai and Sunfire are cousins technically. So for Sunfire, he also knows about the Silver Samurai and of course his criminal empire. Kind of like, okay, so I know why Wolverine's here for. He's a hero, but like, why are you here? Now, for the Silver Samurai, once you do have him, Wolverine, and Sunfire being able to get out of the prison, he does explain why he wanted to break Sunfire out, because he got word about what was going to happen in Japan very soon. That basically they were going to release the Red Ronin robot in Japan as the way to begin targeting mutants across the country. And so for the Silver Samurai, he's kind of like, listen, we now have to work together, be the first line of defense for the mutant race, not just for the country, but our people, the mutants across this country. Now for Logan, he's kind of having a hard time believing that Japan would go out of their way to release the Red Ronin. Now you do have Wolverine arrive where the Red Ronin robot's being held at. Now, when he does arrive, he does run into Yukio. Now, for Yukio, like I said earlier, these two characters, they're basically lovers or ex-lovers. Now, for Wolverine, we can kind of tell that he's not really trying to get back with her, but for Yukio, if Wolverine offers the chance to get back together, she would take it in a heartbeat. But also right now, she's currently watching over his adopted daughter. Now, with that being said, you do have the two characters realize they're not the only ones there right now trying to get their hands on the Red Ronin robot. You also have, well, the Hand there as well, the evil ninja organization. Now, of course, for our two heroes, they're right now trying to figure out what to do. And basically, it's to stop the Hand. And so once you do have our heroes decide to try their best to stop the Hand becomes a quick afterthought very quickly. And the reason why, because, well, somebody had just activated Red Ronin. Now we come to find out it is a character known as Tusu for Wan. Now this one right here, this guy, he's the one currently controlling the robot, but at the same time, he's the guy who gave this robot all these different upgrades as well. But the question is, why in the world did he turn on the robot? It's not to fight against the Hand, no, because it's Japan right now trying to make a statement saying, listen, we are a powerful country. We are a country who can basically take care of themselves. We don't need anybody's help at all. And so, of course, it's them saying like, if there is going to be a mutant problem down the road, we have this great robot right here to handle that problem. Now, this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline, and I'm not going to say like it's a rush ending, but things do get wrapped up very quickly here. But you do have Wolverine being able to get back inside the robot with the help of Sunfire and also Yukio as well. Now, once he does get back inside, you do have Logan being able to find a way to shut down the robot. But here comes the next problem though. You see, he only shut down the main part of the robot. If the robot has the ability to shoot off one of its body parts to use in a battle, that body part now has a mind of its own. So one of the hands was being used as a separate weapon fighting against Sunfire. So the hand of the Red Ronin has a mind of its own. And so for Sunfire, he's kind of stuck in the moment. And so for Sunfire, he begins to freak out. But thanks to Magneto earlier on in the X-Men timeline, Sunfire can no longer control his ability like he used to. And so right now, we're seeing the possibility of a nuclear explosion coming from Sunfire. Now you do have Logan being able to free Sunfire and calm him down, but the problem is that the government, they saw all this. And so of course, they're going to say once again that Sunfire does not have the ability to control his powers and most likely lock him up all over again. And so this kind of leads into the ending of this storyline where we're basically picking up with our heroes going their separate ways. Silver Samurai, he does stay in Japan. We see him basically praying over his blade. But for Wolverine and also Sunfire, they leave Japan. Now, for Wolverine, going to take Sunfire over to Canada to basically work with Alpha Flight for a tad bit of time to kind of help him learn how to control his abilities. But with that being okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the X-Men. And we're going to pick up with the Uncanny X-Men Annual 1996. Now, this is right here really important for not just the X-Men, but also X-Factor as well. Of course, as you all know, we can't currently cover X-Factor anymore because the rest of the Volume 1 X-Factor series is not on Marvel Unlimited or on Comixology either. But this annual is really important for both Bishop and also Shard. Now, when it comes to Shard, man, you know what? I'm going to say explaining her later on in this video. But first, we have to pick up with another character who does play a major role in this storyline. And that would be a character known as Preacher. Now, for Preacher, he appeared in the last Uncanny X-Men annual number 95. And when it came to Preacher, he had the ability to basically paint the future. So every single time he had a dream of the future, he was then able to paint it out. Now, he did move into the wilderness as a way to have some alone time, but to also have a different organization who's currently trying to chase after him. And so when it comes to Preacher, before he's able to leave this current location, he does paint out another mural. And when he does, he paints the mural of Shard. Now, Shard is the younger sister of Bishop. And when it comes to Shard, she had died in the far future. But here comes the big catch, though. You see, when it came to Bishop, he then found this hologram of Shard, where this hologram had stored all the different memories of Shard leading up to the moment that she had technically died. And so for a brief moment, Bishop did have his sister, but not in a physical form. Now, when it came to hologram, it did get damaged, but you didn't have Forge being able to work on it. Now, Forge did not inform Bishop that he was able to fix the hologram, allowing Shard to be back in comics all over again. But either way, for Preacher here, he painted two pictures, one of Shard and one of Bishop. He's kind of wondering what in the world could this possibly mean. But either way, he now knows he has to get the heck out of there. And the reason why? You now have another human mutant hunting organization better known as Humanity's Last Stand. And they were trying their best to locate Preacher. But of course, he was able to get away. Now, when it comes to Humanity's Last Stand, they also had appeared in an earlier storyline when it came to X-Factor comics. You see, they were trying to steal information from Forge computer. And the reason why, because in the past, Forge had created weapons that had the ability to shut down mutant powers. And so, of course, they wanted information to create their own kind of powerful weapons. The problem was that they were stopped by Shard, the hologram version of Shard. And so you had those guys report back to their higher ups like, hey, listen, we were stopped by this hologram. It was pretty wild. And so when it came to them going to Preacher's place, they found all his paintings he left behind, including the one known as Shard. And so now this organization has a face, like, okay, that's her right there. That's the person who has supposedly stopped our guys from being able to steal information from X-Factor. But now we have to transition over to Bishop and Storm. And the reason why, because you have these two characters heading over to Las Vegas. Now, there was a miniseries we did not really cover, and I'm thinking about covering it. It's called XSE. It kind of gives us a background of Bishop's future. The only reason why I'm not covering because Bishop had another solo series where unfortunately I was not able to cover that either because again, thanks to Marvel not putting things out there, I really can't sit down and cover that series yet. And so I kind of want to cover his miniseries before we cover XSE. But either way, we did learn that storyline that Vegas kind of where Bishop grew up at in his far future. But the reason why Storm and Bishop came here to Vegas is to meet up with Wildchild and also Shard. Because Forge did not inform Bishop that he had officially fixed Shard, the hologram version of her. And so, of course, it's kind of like, okay, for Wildchild, who's madly in love with Shard, he wants to help her out. He wants to allow her the chance to reunite with her brother. And really, when it comes to this meeting, it goes south very quickly. And the reason why, because for Shard, she knows her brother very well. Because for Bishop, he lost Shard twice technically. He lost the real form of her in the far future, but he also lost the hologram before when it got broken. Now, yes, Forge was able to fix it. But for Bishop, it's kind of like, what's the actual point of me trying to rebond with this hologram of my sister who is basically just holding on to old things from her mind, her past, her old memories? It's not fair for me to go through the process with the possibility of her dying again or losing her again. And so when they both arrive, for Shard, she wants to hug her brother, look him in his eyes. But for Bishop, he can't do it. Now, while you have that conversation going on, for Humanity's Last Stand, they had just released the Hound. Now, the Hound is technically this mutant that had been worked on by Humanity's Last Stand as a way to hunt down other mutants like Bishop, Wildchild, Storm, and also Shard. But getting back over to the conversation between Bishop and Shard, it does go south very quickly here because for Bishop, he has been trying his best to make a life for himself in the past. And so the whole idea of Shard being here, this hologram of her, is just reminding him of the future where he came from. And of course, reminding him how he lost his sister in the far future. And so even though this is a hologram, it keeps reminding him that he lost his sister, not once, but twice. And he has been trying his best to move on from it. But for Shard, she was just kind of hoping that for her brother, he will look past what she is and allow her to be in his life. But the conversation does get stopped because you have Bishop realize that they have been watched the entire time. You see, for Bishop, he realized they were being watched by somebody, and that would be the character known as, well, Preacher. Now, for Preacher, he went there to basically warn Bishop and Shard about the Hound, who's on his way over there to basically capture Shard, or at least Bishop. And the thing is, by the time you have Preacher being able to catch Bishop up, that is when you have Hound appear. Now, when Hound does appear, you do have Hound go after Bishop at first. Now, for Shard, she does try her best to help out. Because with Shard, she knows how dangerous Hound is. Because in an earlier storyline for X Factor, they had dealt with Hound, and they had barely survived. Now, when it comes to Shard, unfortunately, she's not really able to stop Hound. And matter of fact, you have Hound being able to grab the device that allows Shard to be there. So just like that, Hound knocks out Bishop, grabs Shard, and disappeared. Now, we do learn here what Humanity's Last Stand big goal is when it comes to Shard. What they want to do is basically break her down, because with the whole idea of this Matrix from the future that's holding on to the memories of Shard, then that means for this organization, they'll have the ability to look into the future, to know what's to come down the road for the mutants, but also for the humans as well, to get themselves prepared as a way to fight against the mutant race. Now, Shard is still there, but the thing is, the device they're using right now is breaking her down. So she's trying her best to stop them, but unfortunately, she can't. But luckily for her, help does arrive. That'd be Bishop, Wildchild, and Storm, because when it came to Preacher, he left a clue behind to tell the heroes where to go. And so this kind of leads into us seeing our heroes fight against Hound. Now, while they're fighting against Hound, you also have Shard kind of trying to break free as well. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and skip a few pages, but we get to the point where while you have our heroes fighting against Hound, you have Shara trying her best to destroy the projector that's basically holding her together at the moment. Because if she doesn't, the scientists at this facility will then be able to get away with her. And so for Shara, she knows she can't allow that to happen. And so you have Shara going out of her way to actually destroy it. And when she does, just like that, there she goes. Now, you also had a place about to blow up as well. So you do have our heroes being able to escape, but to also get on the Blackbird. Now, this kind of leads into the idea that Shard is possibly gone forever, but that's not the case. In some strange way, she's now alive, but not technically completely. She's now a proton being. And so with her now being here, she now has the ability to be with Bishop, to be with Wildchild, and actually build a relationship with him as well. Now, as the book does close, you have Storm kind of realize that they didn't get any answers of what's going on in that facility with the idea of Hound, with the idea of another organization out there trying to bring down our heroes. And so with that being said, okay, so it's now time for us to go ahead and work our way up to Operation Zero Tolerance, the next X-Men crossover I want to talk about soon on the channel. But as you all know, I love the idea of working our way up to the crossover, meaning that I love covering all the different stories that basically lead into that crossover. And so with that being said, the first storyline I'm going to talk about is Magneto's first solo series in the 1990s. Now, there are a few things I want to explain about when it comes to this Magneto, quotation marks around Magneto. Because around this time in Marvel Comics, you had this guy who called himself Joseph look just like Magneto. Let me explain. You see, there was an event called Fatal Attractions. You had Charles Xavier shut down the mind of Magneto in that event right there. Now, for Magneto, he had Colossus and his acolytes basically watch over him after that particular moment. But then, right after that, he disappeared because their spacecraft had basically crashed on Earth. And so for Colossus, he lost Magneto and had no idea where he went to. But then out of nowhere, this other character appeared named Joseph. He woke up one day, it's kind of like, who am I and where am I? But then over time, he began to learn that he was Magneto in the past. But the problem is that he does not remember anything from his past being Magneto. The only thing he does remember is just waking up one day in the middle of a field and be found by a woman and some kids. And so ever since that moment right there, it's been Joseph basically hearing all the bad things he did in the past as Magneto, but also being this great threat towards the X-Men. And so that is why, as you get into the opening pages of this storyline, we pick up with Joseph right now trying to look in the computer of the X-Men to figure out more about his past. Now, for the X-Men, they have been really trying their best to block out any information about what Magneto did in the past to the X-Men, but also to the world, just in case Joseph does slip back into his old role again. But the problem is, for Joseph, he wants to know so badly because it's his past that has basically been blocked from him. He needs to know who he truly was. So of course, it's him right now basically hacking into the computers of the Xavier School to learn more about his past. And that is when he learns that Avalon, his space station he had on Earth, above Earth, had basically crashed in a particular area. And so for Joseph, he's kind of like, I need to go there to kind of figure out more about my past. Now, while he's trying to look up more information about where Avalon had crashed at, you then have have Rogue appear. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, Rogue and Joseph were getting very close because her and Gambit had a few issues. But it's her right now being very upset about the fact that it's Joseph right now hacking into the computers of Xavier's school to learn more about his past. But he does explain, like, you don't understand. Like, this is my past. I have the right to learn about it, but at the same time, it bothers me because I do not remember anything at all. And so she kind of sees that this is a man right now who just wants to know his own past, to learn more about himself. And so she does allow him to leave. And so you do have Joseph, being able to find what's left of Avalon. Now, while he's walking around the crash site, he does find all these different kind of shrines that were basically made as a way to pay respect to him. Because again, for Magneto, he was kind of like this god for some mutants. Matter of fact, let me explain real quick, because you do have Magneto be confronted by the Acolytes here. The Acolytes were a group of people who basically praised Magneto like their god, their great leader, that this man right here would lead the mutant race into a better future. And so, of course, when he does arrive, at first they want to attack him. But then he said, hey guys, stop. I'm a mutant. I'm not here to fight against you. But you then have these different members of the Acolytes begin to realize that this Joseph person does look very similar to Magneto. They're kind of wondering, like, what in the world is truly going on here? Now, there is another group out there of acolytes, but being led by a different person, and that would be Exodus. Now, when it came to Marvel in the 1990s, they did not really try to explain the complete origin of Exodus, only gave us like small pieces here and there. But for Exodus, he was Magneto's right-hand man when Avalon was still in space, and we still have Magneto being, well, Magneto. But of course, you have this group right here believe that, well, Magneto is officially gone. And so for Exodus, he's now the one in charge of the Acolytes, the ones right now with him. Now, with that being said, one of his Acolytes has just caught Amalia Vault. And I really hope I pronounce her name correctly for once. But for Amalia here, she tried her best to stop Exodus. And here's the reason why. Because right now, he is building a brand new Avalon. And as soon as it does take off, it's going to cause a major problem for the rest of the world, basically causing earthquakes, floods, you name it, happening across the entire world when this massive aircraft or spacecraft does take off. And so for Amalia, her main goal was to basically stop him, kind of like, listen, we cannot kill innocent people. Magneto wouldn't want that. But for Exodus, he said yes, he would, because for Magneto, his main goal was to protect the mutant race. And sooner or later, knowing Magneto, he would reach this point right here as a way to protect the mutant race. Now, when you do have basically Exodus trying to kill off Amalia, at the very last second, she is saved by Fabian Cortez. Now, Fabian Cortez was an acolyte, but here's the thing. He's always scheming, trying to find different ways to put himself in some kind of position of power. And so for Fabian Cortez, it's him right now coming back here and basically begging for forgiveness. This comes after he already betrayed Magneto like twice, and also Exodus as well. But either way, it's him begging for forgiveness, saying that he realized what he did in the past was completely wrong. But it's also him saying like, hey, listen, don't kill off Amalia. Like, listen, I beg you, please let her live. Now for Exodus, he allows Fabian to rejoin the Acolytes, but also he does spare Amalia's life. Now for Fabian Cortez, we have to remember he's always scheming. So for Amalia, she realized there's something up his sleeve at the moment. Now, I do want to transition back over to Joseph. And here's the reason why. Because for Joseph right now, is him seeing all these different acolytes beginning to praise him. Like, oh my God, our Messiah has returned. Like, this is the second coming of Magneto. Like, he will lead us into safety. This is beautiful. This is great. But for Joseph, he's more of like, I don't get it. Like, these guys praise me as some kind of god, but at the same time, these people want to attack humans. Like, that right there is strange. And so for Joseph, with him spending time with the X-Men, he's kind of like, listen, I get the idea that you guys believe I can lead you guys to safety, but what about working with the humans to build harmony between the two groups? Because I have been with the X-Men for a good while now, and that's their goal they're trying to achieve. But for the Acolytes, they have been with Magneto in the early 1990s. So in their mind, whatever the X-Men believe is going to lead to the end of the mutant race. And so right now, they're kind of like, no, you are mistaken. The X-Men ways are the wrong way to go. And matter of fact, you do have some of the Acolytes bring up the fact that there are now new weapons out there being used as a way to bring down mutants. And for example, you have the Razors arrive. Now, the Razors are basically these robot suits being controlled by two people at the same time to fight against the mutant race. And for the Acolytes, apparently they had some dealing with the Razors over time before Joseph had arrived. But you do have one appear. Now, for Joseph, he does use his powers as a way to fight back, but this is not Joseph being Magneto and just going ahead and killing off these guys. No. This is Joseph trying his best to find a peaceful way, but kind of realize he can't do that. And so you do have Joseph just go ahead and like defeat the robot, but you do have the two guys inside the robot basically retreat. Now, once they do leave, for the Acolytes, they look at Magneto again as their Messiah, their protector, their God, because look at what he just did for us. He protected us from that robot. He is back. But for Joseph, he is not ready to lead a group like this in a way of some kind of sick religion, or him saying like, I can't lead you guys like the way you want me to, because I'm not that guy that you guys remember. But for a brief moment, we do jump back over to Amalia, who's currently a prisoner for Exodus right now. But you have Amalia talk to, Fabian Cortez. And of course, it's her thinking Fabian as a way to saving her life. But then she tells him about Joseph. And so this begins Fabian trying to scheme in a way to put himself in some kind of position of power. And so as we do transition back over to Joseph, you have Joseph find, Avalon. And of course, this part of Avalon belonged to Magneto, his quarters. And so you do have Joseph open up this place. Once he does go inside, he finds this video of Magneto. And just hearing the voice of Magneto, hearing what he had to say about what to do for the Acolytes, the mutants, and the humans, for Joseph, he can't believe that this man right here was him in the past. Like, it is completely a different person. And so, of course, he does get more upset with himself. But then he's confronted by Fabian Cortez. Now, this is Fabian Cortez not even telling Joseph about their past with one another. Because again, for Joseph, he was an acolyte, but he had portrayed Magneto in the past. But this is Joseph coming to Magneto and saying like, hey, listen, so there is this guy better known as Exodus, who's right now trying to do something big in your name because he still believes and looks at you as his God, his protector, this great, powerful being. But the thing is, if Avalon, his new Avalon, takes off, that can bring a lot of crazy things to happen across the entire world, killing off innocent people. Now, for Joseph, at first, he's kind of like, I can't do anything about that. Like, I can't fight back as a guy right there. I don't know what to do. But at the same time, it's Fabian using his words, saying like only Magneto can save the world before a bunch of innocent people die. And so because of that right there, you have Joseph say, you know what? Fine. It's time for me to be Magneto as a way to stop Exodus. And so that is why, as we dive into the second chapter, what you're seeing right now is Joseph in the Magneto suit. So it's Joseph trying to put himself back in that role where if they do confront Exodus, there's a possibility that he'll believe that Joseph is Magneto. Because for Joseph, and I kind of forgot to mention this, for Joseph, he is younger looking than, well, the Magneto we saw back in Fatal Attraction. So for some people out there, they're kind of like, are you Magneto or you're somebody else? Like, how in the world did you get younger? But either way, for Joseph right now, is him trying to pretend to be Magneto, and is Fabian trying his best to motivate Joseph to keep going like, no, you're getting there. Don't worry. Sooner or later, you'll make folks believe that you are the man that you used to be. But that is when you have the acolytes arrive. Now, when the acolytes do arrive, it's basically them right now kind of really telling Joseph here about Fabian Cortez, because for Joseph, he does not remember Fabian. He has no idea that Fabian had tried to kill him in the past. And so once he does learn that, he does get very upset at Fabian, but also upset with the acolytes as well who wanted to attack Fabian. And so once you have Joseph kind of show his anger in his voice, it's kind of like, oh my God, he's showing the acolytes a small glimpse of him in the past when he was Magneto. He had everyone stop in the room. And now for Joseph, he's kind of like, Fabian, you came here and made me believe that you came here to basically help me, to help you stop Exodus. But now I'm kind of wondering, why are you really here? Because you tried to kill me supposedly in the past. But it's Fabian saying like, sir, I changed my ways. I am a better person now. I only came here to basically help you to stop Exodus. Now we do pick up with a character known as Julian Armstrong. Now for Julian Armstrong, he was one of the two guys in the robot, that Razor robot that attacked in the last chapter. And so for Julian, it's him right now wanting to kind of go back once again and try to bring down Magneto. He wants to kill off Joseph. And the reason why, because in the past, Magneto had killed off his brother. But of course, for Joseph, he answers to two people. That would be somebody known as Trask and also the General. Now, here's the thing, because for Trask, we don't know which one it is, but apparently he is right now working with the General. And so with them now having a location of where Magneto could possibly be at, he wouldn't use Armstrong to go after Magneto. No, he wants to use missiles and blow that area up. But you also have Joseph getting ready to head over to where Exodus is at. Except before he does, Fabian says you need to take these acolytes with you. They want to be guided by you. They want to be your followers all over again. And so, of course, for Joseph, he kind of realized he has to continue the idea of being their Messiah, being their great God, their great leader. But that is when we do transition back over to Exodus. And he realized that Fabian had disappeared. We now know where he's at, but for Exodus, he has no idea. But he believes that Amalia knows where Fabian had ran off to. And so you have Exodus saying, listen, you better tell me. If not, it's only going to get worse for you. Now, for Amalia, she's trying her best to not tell him anything, but he then pulls out this alien parasite that has the ability to suck your blood out, but also put poison in your body and lay eggs as well inside your body. It's his own way in interrogating her to get the information that he is currently looking for. But getting back over to Joseph, it's Joseph right now getting his group ready to head over to the Arctic to fight against Exodus, or to at least try to talk to him to stop him. But before they leave, they have a few questions like, hey, Magneto, what about our enemies here? Like the ones who attacked us earlier, the Razors. Now, of course, for Magneto, he's kind of like, I don't know what to say here. But you have Fabian say, Joseph, you need to tell them to go ahead and attack their enemies to get rid of them. That kind of shows them that you are a man of power, a man he's scared of. Then they will most likely follow you over to the Arctic. And so, of course, that's what Joseph says to do. Now, while they're trying to do that, you did have everyone realize that one of their own is currently missing. And the reason why, because Julian Armstrong had took that acolyte as a prisoner. Now, for the acolytes, they're kind of hoping that Magneto would just go ahead and basically kill this guy off because he's a human. Once a human goes against one of their own, that human has to die. But for Joseph, he's not in the idea of killing people. This is a man who still kind of believes what the X-Men believe, to find a peaceful way to fix the world. And so, of course, even though right now one of his acolytes might get their head blown off, he's trying his best to find the best way to get out of this situation. And so, of course, he does use his powers as a way to shut down the mind of Julian. And so for Julian, he did get injured earlier when it came to his situations against Joseph. And so with his injuries, he's on the verge of death. But he's kind of surprised to see that Joseph did not kill him off. And so for Julian, he's kind of like, why in the world did you keep me alive for? Like, are you trying to be forgiven for your past mistakes, your past sins? You can't do that. Now, it's also Julian telling Joseph, like, hey, I hate you. I want to watch you die because you killed off my brother. Now, it's also Julian kind of like, listen, even though I'm going to die, we're all going to die sooner or later. Don't worry, you're going to join me here soon. Now, you do have Julian basically die there, but after he dies, you have Joseph find Julian's wallet, being able to figure out that, well, Julian had a family. And so for Joseph, he's kind of like, okay, you know what? I should go tell his family that their husband, their father, is no longer around. But then you have Fabian Cortez walk into the room. And with Fabian Cortez, he's bringing up the fact that once again for the acolytes, they're kind of like, hey, listen, even though we've seen like small glimpse of you being your old self, being Magneto, we still don't believe that you are our savior, our God, our leader. And so for Joseph, he's trying his best to convince them that he is Magneto, even though he's trying to not be Magneto. He had a hard time deciding what he should actually do here. But while he tries to listen to why these acolytes do not believe that he is the man that he used to be, you have Joseph kind of realize they're all in danger. Because earlier Julian said it won't matter anymore. We're all going to die here sooner or later. So basically it was him saying like, hey, even after I die, don't worry. I'm going to see you in the afterlife because we're all going to die here soon. What he meant by that was when it came to Trask in the general, they had fired missiles towards that location where Joseph is at. And so, of course, those missiles are now arriving. And really for Joseph, this is great. And the reason why, because with these missiles being here, you now have Joseph being able to be that hero, being able to protect these acolytes who are currently in danger at the moment. And so once you do have Joseph being able to get rid of those missiles just like that, he has the acolytes back on his side again. They're kind of like, oh my God, he's our savior. He protected us. He did all this for us. Like he is our great king, our great God. Now for Joseph, he's kind of like, okay, cool. Whew, I was able to save lives without killing people. This is great. But you have Fabian realize what's going on in the mind of Joseph. That Joseph right now is battling two sides of him, Magneto and Joseph. And both sides are completely different from one another. And for Fabian, he kind of realized this might cause him problems down the road when it comes to his plans. But with the acolytes now back on his side, it's now time to head over to Exodus. Now you do have Joseph go out of his way to create this aircraft as a way to fly over to the Arctic, but it's Joseph saying like, first, we gotta make a quick stop. Now, here's the problem though, because that stop he's gonna make is a stop over to where Julian's family is at to basically tell them like, your father, your husband had died. Now that conversation will go south very quickly here, but they do leave. And so to close on the second chapter, it's now us picking up with Exodus. And it's Exodus saying like, okay, I have now heard about this Joseph person. This Joseph person has to go. I have to get rid of him. And so now for Exodus here, he's planning to kill off Joseph because he looks at Joseph as a false god, a false king, somebody pretending to be his great leader. And so this kind of leads into Joseph basically stopping by to pay a visit over to, well, Julian's family. Now, for Joseph, he's trying his best to change the story of how Julian basically died. Like, for example, when it comes to Julian's son, he's kind of like, hey, did my father die by the hands of a mutant? And you have Joseph say, well, yes, Julian was fighting against a group of mutants, but no, it was not the mutants who had killed off your father. No, it was a mechanical failure with his tech. And so unfortunately, he died that way. But before he died, he gave me a message. Now, before you have Joseph being able to give that message, Julian's son says, doesn't matter. My father still died because of mutants. If there were no mutants, my father would not be out there basically fighting against the mutant race. So already at a young age, this young boy has so much hatred towards the mutant race because of his father, but also because he lost his uncle. Because remember, Julian said Magneto killed off his brother, but it's also Joseph saying like, well, listen, Julian also told me this when he died. He wants you guys to go in a different direction. That basically, he don't want you guys to get revenge for his death. Matter of fact, he realized this whole stupid war between mutants and humans is basically endless. He'd rather see you guys go in the path of love. Now, of course, Joseph is flat out lying. And matter of fact, Julian's family, they know he's lying. The young boy knows, no, my father hated mutants so much, there's no way he would just change his mind just like that. And you didn't have the boy kind of realize that most likely this guy, Joseph, is a mutant. And maybe this guy is the reason why, which is his father no longer around. And so you have him make a whole entire scene in the middle of their neighborhood. And so for Joseph, he has to leave. He gets away, but yeah, he's kind of like, man, that was a huge mistake. But as we do switch back over to Exodus, is him right now getting ready to basically, fight against Magneto, Joseph. He's kind of like, guys, listen, get everything ready. Just in case Joseph does arrive, I want to be ready to fight against him, but also it's him making sure they're ready to leave, to fly out in space, but to also kill off the human race as well. And now, once again, as we switch back over to Joseph, it's him kind of realizing that he can't be Magneto. He can't be that guy because he's not that guy who went through all the different trials that Magneto has gone through to become that person. Matter of fact, that line right there I just said will become very important in the later parts of this storyline. But it's Joseph kind of like, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy they need right now. I can't be Magneto. There's no way to be so cruel. And he's kind of like, you guys have put so much faith in me, but the thing is, I don't believe I can do this. And so he walks away. But as we jump back over to Julian's family, we see them now having a conversation with Trask. Now, again, we have no idea which one this is, but for Trask, it's him right now leaving the family after gathering information that Joseph was there. But it's also him getting word that the Acolytes are most likely right now in the Arctic. And of course, they're talking about Exodus group right now. Now, when it comes to Joseph, he's getting close to New Avalon, but you also have Exodus wanting to use their defenses as a way to blow Magneto and his acolytes out of the sky. But you didn't have Exodus say no. Because what if there is a possibility that man is my great king, my great God, my great leader? I can't do that. So, of course, he does not. He allows Joseph and his acolytes to land on New Avalon. But when you do have Magneto and his crew arrive at New Avalon, well, Avalon begins to go in the sky. Now, once it does that, New Avalon begins to send out or transmit codes across the world. And of course, Larry Trask and the general, well, basically right now, they pick up on that signal. So now they know where the acolytes, where Joseph and also Exodus are currently at. And so this leads into the meeting. You got Joseph, you got Exodus meeting one another. I forgot his name. But with the two characters meeting one another, is Exodus allowing Joseph to kind of show like, okay, you claim to be Magneto. you claim to be our great God, our great leader, then show me. Show me you're that guy. Show me you are that great leader we need currently. And so you do have Joseph try his best to be that guy for Exodus and his acolytes by showing how strong he is in the mind, in his voice, the way he walks, the way he moves, to show that, yes, I am your God and your leader. But you didn't have Joseph say, hey, so listen, Avalon is not going to launch anytime soon. Like, matter of fact, wait here until I say otherwise. Now, for Exodus, he's kind of like, how dare you? Like, you were gone. We spent so much time to rebuild what you have built for us in the past. And now we are able to give it back to you. And now you want to get rid of it? Now, for Joseph, he does continue to show that strength in his voice, that he is that man in charge. But here comes the big problem. You see, earlier, Fabian Cortez told Joseph, like, oh, by the way, you were also madly in love with Amalia Vault. And so, of course, for Joseph, when he sees Amalia, he tries to use her as a way to convince everyone that, yes, it's him, Magneto, the man who was supposedly in love with Amalia. The thing is, Magneto was never in love with Amalia. And so when he goes to kiss her, just like that, you have Exodus realize this is not their guy. This is not Magneto. And so, of course, he attacks him. When it comes to this battle, you do have Exodus be the one to be able to kind of win the battle. And here's the thing for me, though. It's really more of Joseph kind of holding back because he's not really allowing himself to show his true power, to tap into his full potential. But you do have a civil war basically break out. It's Magneto and his acolytes fighting against Exodus and his acolytes. And so while this battle goes on, you do have Exodus being able to be the one to basically defeat Joseph. Now, Joseph is not dead. Because right after that, you didn't have Fabian Cortez kind of pretend like, okay, listen, I had no idea that that guy was not Magneto. I believe he was Joseph. Amalia lied to me. It's Fabian trying to stay in that position where sooner or later he'll find a way to gain the power of position again by staying on the Exodus good side. But later on that night, you have Joseph return. When he does return, this is Joseph no longer thinking and pretending or acting that he is Magneto. This is the man who's now fully committed to switch over into that role to say, yes, I am Magneto. So that is why as we enter the final chapter of the storyline, we're truly picking up with Magneto, Joseph being Magneto. Like, it's him now truly believing that he is Magneto. Now for Exodus, he's kind of like, listen, I already proved you wrong once. Like, we battled, you lost to me. There's no way you are Magneto. But you didn't have Joseph go out of his way to begin to attack Exodus, to kind of be like, no, I am Magneto. I am that guy. And you have Fabian Cortez. You have Amalia realize that, yeah, for Joseph, he truly does believe now that he is Magneto. Now, for Amalia, she feels like that right there is dangerous. And the reason why, because now it's two different personalities fighting for control over the body of this man. There's Joseph and there's also Magneto. The question is right now, who's going to win? And it does seem like right now it's going to be the side of Magneto. Now for Trask and also for the general, they had already fired missiles towards the Arctic. So of course, sooner or later, those missiles are going to be able to hit the Arctic and most likely kill off everyone there in the Arctic right now. All the acolytes, Joseph, Exodus, they're all about to be hit really hard. But we do see Fabian Cortez kind of go out of his way to try to silence Amalia because she does kind of figure out like what Fabian is trying to do. Now, here's the thing, because while he's trying to do that, the other acolytes walk into the room. And for all the acolytes, they know Fabian Cortez. They know what he wants to do. Get back into a position of power again. And so, of course, while you do have Fabian get distracted for a brief moment, you do have Amalia being able to sucker punch him, allowing her to be free once again. But while you have the battle go on between Magneto and also Exodus, you have Magneto realize, okay, cool, here comes these jets who are about to deliver missiles into this area. Now, for Exodus, for a brief moment, he truly believes that Joseph is working with those jet flyers, but in reality, he's not. And so you have Magneto silence Exodus and try to figure out how to get rid of the brand new enemies who had just appeared. Now, for Magneto, it's him right now not trying to kill off these pilots because it's him still being Joseph somewhat. But it's Exodus right now in his corner, whispering in his ear like, go ahead, kill them all. Show them who's more powerful. Show them the mutant race have the right to overcome the human race. But while you have basically Exodus doing that, Amalia realized if Joseph does kill off anybody, he's going to snap. He will then become the true Magneto. And so you have Amalia go out of her way to take out the pilots. Matter of fact, she launches them out of their own jets. And so when that happens, Magneto will no longer try to kill them at all. Instead, now he can just focus on their missiles to get rid of them. But also now he cannot be labeled as a killer. Now, you do have the general inform Trask like, listen, if this new Avalon does lift off the ground, we are all basically screwed here because that thing has the ability to cause disasters across the entire world. But for Trask, he no longer wants to stop this new Avalon from launching. And the reason why, because he can use this moment right here as a way to bring the human race together even more, to then go after the mutants, to basically say, let's go ahead and kill them off. He's trying to use this as a way to bring more hatred towards the mutant race, even though millions of innocent lives will most likely be lost. And so this leads into a conversation with Amalia where you have her show Magneto all these different pictures. With these pictures, it's basically her kind of saying like, you can't be Magneto because Magneto went through a lot. There was a Holocaust. There was losing his brothers, his sister, his mother, his father. He got married. He lost his daughter. He lost so much. But everything he lost made him the man he is today. So you can't be Magneto because you didn't really live through those moments. He did, but not you. And so because of that, it kind of brings Magneto back, or sorry, Joseph here back into reality. It's kind of like, you know what? She's right. I can't be that man because that man went through things that I technically did not go through or don't remember. And so with him is now him realizing he can no longer be Magneto. He must just be Joseph. But there's one more thing he has to do as Magneto, where it's him going ahead and just breaking up the Acolyte group, saying like, hey guys, listen, the Acolytes are no more. Just go your separate ways. Go across the world. It's him being able to get rid of this group that's been a problem for X-Men and really the human race for a good while now in X-Men comics, to kind of put this group right now on the back burner. But once he's able to disband this group, he finally goes back over to the school of Charles Xavier, where we do see him being able to come home to Rogue. Now, with these two characters, we're kind of left to believe still there is a possibility they might get together. But now his head is clear. Now he knows what person to be, and that would be Joseph. But either way, the book does kind of end on that note, but there's still one more page left. You see, for Julian's wife, she hated what Joseph did, but at the same time, it's her kind of realizing that thanks to her husband, Julian, her son right now is on the same path as her husband. And she's afraid of the fact that he might end up dead like his father. So now it's up to her to kind of push her son in a better direction. And so with that being said, okay, so we are technically reaching the post-era of the Onslaught crossover with Uncanny X-Men issue number 338. And the reason why I'm saying that because when it came to the crossover, as we all know, a lot of big things took place in that crossover. The Avengers, they're no longer around. Fantastic Four, they're no longer around. Charles Xavier, he got arrested. So, of course, he's also no longer around either. And so now for the X-Men, they're basically on their own here. They have to kind of guide themselves. Now, technically, this is not the first time for the X-Men to be without Charles Xavier, without him being there to guide them, but it is a tad bit different now because for Charles, the last time he left, it was because he fell in love. But this time, he got arrested. And right now for the mutant race, it's kind of like the humans in America, they're beginning to hate on the mutants even more. And of course, that means bigger things to come to target our heroes when it comes to humans beginning to hunt down the mutant race. Now, the first person I kind of want to sit down and talk about will be Archangel. Here's the reason why, because for his character, he has gone through a lot by this point in Marvel Comics and really the last 10 years leading up to this point right here, because for Archangel, he lost his wings. Then he met Apocalypse, who turned him into Archangel. And for a moment there, he was fighting against his friends. Now, he has been trying his best to turn his life around. You know, he fell in love with Psylocke. As a matter of fact, there was a point where she got severely injured by Sabretooth, but so did he. But it now kind of seems like he's going through another transformation in his life. And of course, this begins the rebirth of Archangel's wings. But you didn't have Archangel be confronted by, well, Ozymandias. Now, when it comes to Ozymandias, he was basically a king back in the same time Apocalypse first popped up. But thanks to Apocalypse, unfortunately, he had lost that role as king, and now he serves Apocalypse. Now here's the thing, because for Ozymandias, his whole thing is to, record the history of the world, but to also predict the future of the world as well. But with that being said, for Ozymandias, he knows how Apocalypse works when it comes to him working on other mutants, changing them like he did to Archangel in X-Factor Comics. And so for Ozymandias, he tells Archangel, like, listen, whatever Apocalypse did to you was basically not done yet. Like, yes, he did give you new wings, of course, metal wings. But the thing is, that was not the final step. Knowing him, he put something else in you. You are now beginning to change. And it's Ozymandias saying, you need to begin to pray to whatever God you worship because, oh my God, protect your soul. But then we do pick up with the X-Men. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, we had a younger looking Magneto. And let me explain, because when it came to Magneto, as we all know, there was an event called Fatal Attractions. With that event right there, you basically had Charles Xavier shut down the mind of Magneto. Now, when he did that, you didn't have the Acolytes, Magneto's people, take care of him. But once they lost their space station, Magneto disappeared. But then this guy right here just popped up out of nowhere, looking younger than our Magneto, but had no idea who he was. And so for the X-Men, for the last few weeks, they have been trying their best to show him his past as he was this super villain. And so they've been showing him different images and videos of what he did in the past. But for Joseph here, he's kind of like, nope. This right here does not help out at all. But also it's him saying like, I don't really have a connection with this person you're showing me. Like, yeah, I get it. That was me supposedly in the past, but like, I don't feel any type of connection really. But while you have the X-Men discussing the past of Joseph, you have Psylocke appear. Now real quick, for Psylocke, we know her power set. She is a psychic. She has a psychic knife. She's a great fighter. Like, that is her power set right there. But you have her appear just out of the shadows, out of nowhere. So for the X-Men, they're kind of like, hey, Psylocke, can you explain to us what the what is going on? Because how in the world were you able to do that? And so, of course, she really can't explain because, as we all know, she had gained the Crimson Dawn around this time in Marvel Comics because, well, Sabretooth had almost killed her off. But the reason why she's here right now is to tell the X-Men, like, hey, listen, we got to find Archangel. When I went to his home, I found a feather. Now, the reason why that is so important because for Archangel, he had metal wings. But as you all know, with the rebirth that took place at the very beginning of this video, that whole idea of metal wings is no longer around. He has his old school wings again. And so for our heroes, they're kind of wondering, how is that possible? But for a brief moment, we do switch over to this church, right? And when we do, we're really picking up with Archangel arriving, but somebody else also arriving at the same time. And that would be, well, you know what? I'm going to save that for later on. But this other person is wanting to talk to the priest. But we also get reminded that when it comes to post-Onslaught, we're technically at that point where you're going to have a lot more people trying to get rid of the mutant race. You got Bastion out there right now trying his best to work with different governments around the world to basically get rid of mutants. You got Graydon Creed right now running for president at the moment, like all these different things. But for Graydon Creed, he has just gained 2 volunteers. Of course, these 2 volunteers are X-Men who have went undercover, Iceman and also Cannonball. So right now, these 2 characters right now are trying their best to find a way to hopefully bring down Graydon Creed. But getting back over to the X-Men, they were able to locate Archangel. Of course, he was at that church. Now, for Archangel, he has no idea why he was able to regain his wings, but also he has no idea why he felt there was some kind of calling that had pulled him over to this church. Either way, when the X-Men do arrive, they realize the other mutant who had arrived there is Pyro. Now, we have not seen Pyro in a very long time when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. And the reason why, because the last time we saw him, we had officially learned that he had the legacy virus. So we're kind of like, okay, cool. With the legacy virus, he should be dead sooner or later. But apparently, he's still alive, but at the very end of his life. And so you do have Pyro right now just attacking this church, but you do have the X-Men being able to officially stop Pyro, but begin to interrogate him to learn what in the world is going on with him. But we do kind of learn here that for Pyro, he was basically an hired assassin as a way to go after people. Now, we're not really told who hired him, but apparently he did go to those people and say, listen, I am dying. And so they kind of felt like with him dying, he had nothing to lose. Now, this plot line will actually continue on over in X Factor Comics. And unfortunately for us, we can't cover those books just yet because for Marvel, they have not put those books back out again for me to actually collect to cover for you guys here on the channel. But either way, you do have Avalanche grab Pyro and being able to get away from the X-Men. But now we're kind of left with this question like, okay, what's going on with Archangel? Because he was able to regain his lost wings. And the question is right now, what in the world is possibly changing Archangel to the point where he's then able to regain what he lost prior to Apocalypse? Like, does Apocalypse have something else planned for our boy down the road? But with that being said, now we're going to go ahead and jump over to X-Men issue number 58. Now with this issue right here, we're going to see Gambit go up against Magneto. And of course, it's all about Rogue once again. But before we're able to see the actual battle, in the opening pages of this issue, we do pick up with Storm. So when it comes to Storm, every single year she goes into the Morlock tunnels as a way to pay her respect to the Morlocks who died in the Mutant Massacre. As we all know, the Mutant Massacre was the first ever X-Men crossover event. And of course, you had the Morlocks get massacred in the actual crossover by the Marauders. And the thing is for Storm, she was technically their leader. Now, she didn't stay with them. She had Callisto stay behind to be the actual leader for the Morlocks while she was away. But of course, again, the Marauders had massacred most of the Morlocks. And so because of that, you have Storm always coming down there to pay her respect. But as she's down there, she sees all these different candles just laying out and kind of wondering like, who in the world else down there right now leaving these candles out for what purpose? She finds Gambit. Now, for Gambit, he was not in the mutant massacre. Matter of fact, when it came to Chris Claremont, he hadn't created Gambit yet. So, of course, kind of like, why in the world is Gambit down here? Now, in the last decade of like X-Men comics, we have been given all these different hints at the idea that for Gambit, he did have some hand in the idea of the mutant massacre or his connection to Mr. Sinister. Now, unfortunately, we have not been told really anything at all, like flat out told like, okay, here his connection to Mr. Sinister and like what was his part in the mutant massacre. But for Storm, she's kind of like, listen, I remember the event very well. You were not there, so why are you here? And so you have Gambit just flat out lie to her saying like, oh, you know, I basically sat down one day and read the computer system and realized what happened down here in the tunnels. And I feel so bad for the Morlocks that I decided to come down here as a way to pay my respect. Now for Storm, she does take that, but at the same time as her kind of like, my guard is now up now because you're lying to me. I can tell, but I can't prove it. But also it's kind of like, he could be doing that for real, but it's still kind of weird. But now we have to shift over to Trish Tilby. Now for Trish Tilby, as we all know, she's this big time reporter, but also the girlfriend to Beast. And so when it came to Trish, we see her right now interviewing Graydon Creed, of course, a guy right now who's trying to run for president as a way to get rid of the mutant race. But either way, for Trish Tilby, she also brings up J. Jonah Jameson, because for JJ, he's right now trying his best to expose Graydon. The whole idea that he's just somebody going after the mutant race for pure hatred. And that's really it. And that's not fair, of course. Now, for Graydon, he does bring up the fact that JJ can't officially talk because this is the same guy who literally did articles on his hatred towards Spider-Man. But then out of nowhere, you have Bobby Drake's father stand up in the crowd to basically make a point here saying like, how dare you? Like you say right now, you're only going after mutants. But what if you don't stop there? What if you go after, you know, elderly people or sick people or someone's race or religion? Like, when does it officially stop? Now, for Bobby, he's kind of like, this is great because for his father, this is character development here because his father kind of nearly did protect Bobby Drake when it came to him being a mutant. So it's his father right now trying his best to turn his life around. But now we have to shift over to Magneto. Now, when it comes to Joseph here, Magneto, he does stop by to see Rogue, right? Now, when it comes to him seeing Rogue, it's him saying like, hey, listen, I believe I just found a way to basically help you when it comes to your mutant ability. And so right now for Magneto, he wants to show Rogue what he had discovered when it comes to her abilities. Now, for Rogue, she was knocked out. She's all like, hey, dude, listen, go outside, wait a tad bit, I'll come out and then we go down the danger room. But I got to change it because I was asleep. But now we shift over to Wolverine and Bishop for like a brief moment. And the reason why, because for Bishop, remember, he only came back in time to figure out who was the X-Men traitor. And so to him, he felt like he had discovered the traitor was actually Charles Xavier. But there is a possibility that he is technically wrong. But either way, while you have the two guys, Wolverine and Bishop, talking to one another, well, Gambit is walking by. And so you have Joseph get attacked by Gambit. And the reason why, because for Gambit, it does look a tad bit creepy here, but you had Joseph just floating outside the window of Rogue. And of course, it does lead into these two guys fighting against one another. Now, when it comes to Gambit, he's really upset because he had Rogue in his corner, right? Like, they were in love. The problem was she looked into his mind. And so when she did, she had discovered a few things about Gambit. So of course, they're at odds with one another. But now there's Joseph, a new guy technically in her life, a guy who might give her a better chance in life. And so you have the two guys fighting against one another. Now you do have Joseph tell Gambit like, hey, listen, the only thing I was trying to do was to show her like, I found a way to help her with her mutant abilities. But for Gambit, he knows that for Rogue, that's a rough road to go down. Like, yes, she had heard so many times that so many people had figured out how to help her with her abilities to only be failed. And so right now she's kind of like, no, not she, he's kind of like, no, you will not be another disappointment in her life where you make her believe you found a way to only fail her. Now you do have Rogue appear. And when she does, it's really more her saying like, listen, I am tired of seeing you two guys fighting over me. But it's also Rogue saying like she kind of realized that she does not belong to anybody at all. And matter of fact, she loves the idea of being alone, away from guys, away from other people. So it's her saying like, if you guys are trying to win me over or possibly get me on your side, you need to find a new act, a new way to win me over. Doing this right here is ridiculous. Two grown men fighting over me like two cubs. And she then just flies away. But of course, to leave us on a cliffhanger, you do have JJ right now just working at the Daily Bugle, getting ready for another piece against Graydon Creed. The problem is that outside his office building, well, you have Havoc about to attack him because remember, Havoc is technically evil at this point in time. That right now he's being controlled by no other than Dark Beast. And so this Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the X-Men, we're going to pick up with some good old Uncanny X-Men issue number 339. Now, with this issue alone, we're kind of sitting down and talking about the idea of what's going on with Havoc post-Onslaught, because when it came to Havoc, as we all know, he was controlled by Dark Beast. And of course, you had Dark Beast try to work for Onslaught, but also use Havoc as the way to help on Onslaught. But with the idea of now Onslaught no longer being around and Dark Beast being defeated, you now have Havoc being able to think on his own, but also go in a completely different direction than he used to when it comes to working with the X-Men, but also working alongside with X-Factor as well. Except before we were able to properly sit down and talk about that when it comes to Havoc, in getting into the opening pages of this issue, we do pick up with Spider-Man. Now, this is Spider-Man arriving at the school of Charles Xavier. Now, for Spider-Man, he has fought alongside with the X-Men many times. But of course, there have been a few times where he has not run into every single member of the X-Men. So of course, when he does arrive at first, he is confronted by Bishop. And for Peter, he's kind of like, wait a second. I know Beast, Wolverine, Jean Grey, Cyclops, but I have no idea who you are. Now, for Bishop, he has no idea who Spider-Man is because for Spider-Man, he was able to pass all the different defenses the school has very easily. Now, you do have Bishop try to fight against Spider-Man, but of course, you do have the rest of the X-Men arrive to explain things to Bishop like, hey, this guy right here, he's good. His name, Spider-Man, he's on our side. Now, the reason why you have Spider-Man here is because to warn the X-Men what J. Jonah Jameson is up to, because we have seen this in earlier issues where when it came to JJ, he believed that he should go out of his way to dig up information on Graydon Creed because he hates the idea of Creed running for president on a hate campaign. And so his main goal is to figure out why in the world does Graydon Creed hate mutants so much for. Now, with all that being said, is Peter telling the X-Men that, but you have Jean Grey realize that she was able to read the mind of Peter without trying. It's kind of like her powers are acting on their own. But now we have to shift over to X-Factor, really more Mystique and also Forge. Now, as you all know, for Graydon Creed, he is the son to both Sabretooth and also Mystique. And so right now, you have Mystique watching CNN and she sees her son on the television right now being that guy who's just trying to win the chance to be president. But she knows her son is truly evil and hates the idea of mutants. his own mother, his own father, and matter of fact, his brother and sister as well, Nightcrawler and Rogue. But either way, for Mystique, while she's watching TV, she recognized that Bobby Drake is there with Graydon Creed as well, that he had officially went undercover. Now, the following day, we do pick up with the X-Men telling JJ as he's getting on a flight. Now, for Beast, he kind of feels like there's no way that JJ will notice he's on the plane with him. But the thing is, Beast around his time in Marvel Comics is the most recognizable character on the team. So, of course, for JJ, he knows when he's being followed. He's kind of like, oh, you guys are now following me because, well, that means I'm getting very close to figuring out what's going on with Graydon Creed. Now, for Beast, he's not alone. He has some backup. That backup would be Cyclops. But Cyclops is also not alone. He also has backup, but on the Blackbird. And that'll be Storm and, of course, Joseph. And as we all know, Joseph is having a hard time figuring out if he is Magneto or not. But when it comes to Joseph, with him having no idea about his past, he wants to know more about Cable and also Scott Summers. And so for Storm, she's all like, okay, sit down and buckle in because it's a long story when it comes to Cable and Cyclops and also Jean Grey. But then we pick up with a character known as Nick. Now, when it comes to Nick, he's in London right now. And the thing is, he has information about Graydon Creed. So, of course, this is him right now trying to meet up with JJ to get that info over to Jonah. So the question is right now, will he be able to meet up with Jonah to give that information? But getting back over to the X-Men, you have the X-Men right now just on the plane chilling. But then out of nowhere, the plane is attacked by a new version of Brotherhood of Mutants. Of course, that would be led by Havoc. You see, like I said earlier, when it came to Havoc, he was being controlled by Dark Beast, who was working with Onslaught. Once you had Onslaught be defeated and Dark Beast was also defeated, Havoc was technically free, but he wanted to own his villain image. And the reason why? To be more proactive, to help out the mutant race, to kind of move away from what Charles and also X-Factor were basically doing. And so this is him saying like, this is me right now being proactive as a way to help out the mutant race by going after JJ. Because again, for JJ, he's going after Graydon Creed, but it's having saying like the mutant race does not need your help at all when it comes to going after different people who are trying to hurt us. Now, there is more to the plan of Havoc here. Unfortunately, we're not really told the whole complete idea of his plan in this one particular story. But you do have the X-Men begin to battle against Havoc, really more Cyclops versus Havoc. But as the battle goes on, it's really more of Havoc trying to express to Cyclops that he's no longer that little brother that was always being, overshadowed by Cyclops, or that person on the X-Men, or that leader of X-Factor, that this is him right now trying to do things different that he believes that will actually work. And so you do have Havoc being able to teleport away. But once he does, you have Storm say Cyclops. To Storm, she believes that once again, Havoc has been mind controlled by somebody else. But for Cyclops, having that small conversation with his brother while they were fighting mid-air really shows Cyclops like, okay, yeah, that's no longer my brother who's being controlled by somebody else. This is an Alex Summers who finally has free will to do whatever he wants to do as a way to help out the mutant race. Now, we also have to remember that Joseph is there as well. And for the world, they believe that Joseph is Magneto, even though for Joseph, he does not remember anything from his past. And so once you do have Joseph go out of his way to save the plane that was attacked by Havoc in the Brotherhood of Mutants, well, you have JJ begin to freak out like, okay, Beast, I know you're part of the X-Men, right? But like, have y'all recruited Magneto? Like, maybe for y'all own image, you should not go out of y'all way to recruit evil mutants like freaking Magneto over there. But this particular issue does end on the note where we do see that Nick, the reporter, who's supposed to meet up with JJ in a few hours, had just got killed off by Bastion. Because for Bastion, let's not forget, he's right now trying to get his whole Operation Zero Tolerance kicked off. And to get it officially kicked off, he needs Graydon Creed by his side to actually get it going. And so he killed off Nick as a way to hide the dark past of Graydon Creed. But now we have to shift over to X-Men issue number 59. Now, when we do, the opening pages of the storyline, it's really more of us picking up with Scott Summers right now at the movies, and he's currently watching a classic movie, a good old classic black and white movie. But for Scott Summers, it's really more of him just trying to use this as a time to get away from all the different things that were going on with the X-Men, Onslaught, Charles Xavier getting arrested, Scott Summers now in charge of the entire school. And so it's him right now trying to use the movies as a way to get some peace and quiet, but you didn't have Jean Grey appear. Now for Jean Grey, she read the mind of her husband and she knew where he was going. So you had Jean Grey basically follow the man. And so for Jean Grey, she wants to know, is Scott upset about the fact that what happened with his brother Alex? And does he want to talk about it? But really for Scott Summers, he's kind of like, no, I don't want to talk about anything going on with my brother at the moment. This time is my peace and quiet time. But as we do switch back over to the school of Charles Xavier, we do pick up with Hercules fighting against Bishop. Now, it's not really like, okay, here comes Hercules and he's right now attacking the school of Charles Xavier. It's really more of, this is Hercules right now coming here to get some answers about what exactly happened to the Avengers. Because when it came to Onslaught, Hercules was not there. And the thing is, in the past, Hercules was a member of the Avengers. And so he arrived back on Earth, he just found out that the Avengers are no longer around. And so his goal right now is to figure out what exactly happened, but to also find the surviving members. So of course he does see Beast, because Beast was an old member of the Avengers, but you also have Beast being able to give Hercules the quick rundown about exactly what happened when it came to Onslaught in the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. But you also have him say, you know what, I'm kind of trying my best to regroup with the last few members of the Avengers. Who else is here besides you, Beast? And that would be Quicksilver. But let's not forget that for Quicksilver, he's also dealing with a major loss in his life, because out of all the Avengers, you also had the Inhumans go into Onslaught as well. And of course, they were transported over to the Heroes Reborn universe. And so because of that, for Quicksilver, he lost Crystal, his wife, the mother to his child, Luna. And so for Quicksilver, he's kind of wondering, how can he move on with his life? How is he able to keep things going for him, but also for his daughter? And so for Logan, Wolverine, he comes in a great time to give some good advice to Quicksilver. He's like, listen, dude, I also lost someone I love too. I lost Mariko, but I kind of realized something, that the dead would want us to keep living on for them, but also for ourselves as well, and not be brought down by their death. But it's also Logan saying, you have a daughter. You have to keep things together, not just for you, for her as well, continuing to live on for that little girl. And you didn't have Quicksilver just run away. Now we do shift over to Joseph. Now remember, Joseph is just a younger version of Magneto who just appeared out of nowhere but does not remember anything from his past. And so when it comes to Joseph right now, he has been in the computer room just looking over data that has been collected over time about Rogue. And the reason why, because for Joseph, with him not remembering anything from his past, but hearing all these horrible things, he's kind of like, okay, I gotta turn my life around. One of those things you try to do right now is to fix Rogue, to help her learn how to control her abilities. And so for Joseph, he believes he found the key to help her out. But the thing is, he tells Quicksilver that. And for Quicksilver, he gets very angry because for Magneto and Quicksilver. These two characters never really had a strong relationship with one another. And matter of fact, it's Quicksilver blaming his father for ruining his life and ruining other people's lives. Now, at first, for Joseph, he does get upset about the idea that for Quicksilver, he would bring that up. But then you have Joseph realize why it was brought up, because technically, this is his son, and he ruined his life. Now we do shift back over to Cyclops and Jean Grey, and I kind of like this a lot because it's adding on to the past of Cyclops, but also kind of building on that bond between Cyclops and, well, Charles Xavier, because you have Cyclops basically tell us that there was a time where he would just go to movies and see all these extraordinary people doing great things for themselves, but also for people around them. And so for Scott, he always dreamed the idea of doing the same thing as the people he saw in the movies. And so when it came to Charles Xavier saying like, hey, you have great power, and that power can be used to help out other people, just like that, it was Scott being able to build that bond with Charles Xavier, because for Charles, he took Scott out of the darkness he was in, and of course, brought him to a brighter side of life. Now, we also get a quick reminder about Bobby Drake and also Sam Guthrie, because these two characters had officially went undercover to work for Graydon Creed and kind of figure out what's going on with him, with the idea of the man trying to run for president. But when it came to Bobby Drake, he found a fax, and the fax is talking about his father, Bobby Drake's father. And the reason why, because in an earlier storyline, while you had Graydon be interviewed by Trish Tilby, you had Bobby's father stand up to Graydon, basically saying like, what he's doing is completely wrong. You're trying to become president to get rid of one particular race of people. But the question is then, when do you stop? Because you're saying now it's just mutants. But then down the road, you could say somebody else's race or religion and so on and so on. But anyways, when it comes to Bobby Drake's father, it does seem like he's being held right now. And so for Bobby, he wants to help his dad out. Now for Sam, he was assigned to go get Graydon for the next part of his campaign. And so when you have Sam locate Graydon, he realized having some kind of conversation. But once you have Sam call out Graydon's name, you have Graydon close the door, hiding the fact of who he was talking to. Now, for Sam, he does try to have a conversation with Graydon. And the thing is, for Sam, he believed that Graydon's parents were dead. Now, as we all know, that's not the case. That Graydon Creed's parents are alive and, well, I guess because that'd be Mystique and also Sabretooth. They're his parents. And so for Sam, he's kind of like, wait a second. I thought your parents were dead, but now you're telling me they're not dead. And the reason why you're trying to run for president is because, well, of them. And so for Sam, we get the idea that he does not know, like most characters, that Mystique and Sabretooth are the parents of Graydon Creed. But you have this issue begin to wind down a tad bit. And what I mean by that statement is that you do have Joseph go to apologize to Pietro about his path with one another. But the thing is, for Pietro, he knows like that apology is not really meaningful, because technically for Joseph here, he does not remember doing anything bad to Quicksilver at all. And so as Pietro is saying like, maybe one day your apology will actually mean something down the road. And so you didn't have Quicksilver leave with Hercules. But this particular issue does close with the idea of Jean Grey and Scott Summers leaving the movies, but also kind of realizing that they have one another to rely on when it comes to handling different types of situations in their lives that'll be coming up very soon, because, well, they're heroes. They're the X-Men. And so now we jump back over to Uncanny X-Men issue number 340. Now, with this issue right here, we're picking up with the possibility of Bobby Drake leaving the X-Men. Really, it is him leaving the X-Men. And the reason why, because as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we're picking up with Bobby Drake visiting his father, who's in the hospital. And the reason why, because Graydon Creed had attacked his father. But the question is, what exactly happened? Now, before we are able to actually sit down and see what happened to Bobby's father, we jump over to Sam Guthrie, the other person right now who went undercover when it came to Graydon Creed's campaign. Now, when it comes to Sam Guthrie, we see him right now wanting to pay a visit over to, well, Graydon Creed. But he has new bodyguards like, no, listen, boss man said he wants to be left alone. But then at the very last second, you didn't have Graydon say, you know what, guys, let Sam in because I want to have a conversation with him as well. But as we do transition back over to Bobby Drake, you have Bobby explain to Storm what exactly happened to his father. So of course, this leads into a flashback. Now, with this flashback, it's really more of us seeing that when it came to Bobby hanging out with Graydon Creed, you had Graydon ask Bobby about a question about fathers. If fathers acted a certain way, will their sons behave the same way as their fathers? Now, the reason why you had Creed ask that question, because as soon as the plan had landed, you had Creed direct Bobby over to a certain location where, of course, Bobby had found his father badly beaten. And then you had Creed just fly away his plane with the rest of his crew. And so for Bobby, he's kind of like, okay, now I know why my father was beaten for, because this man right here stood up against you. But once you learn about him, you were hoping to get information out of him about me, X-Man, better known as Iceman. And the reason why you have Creed just going around asking folks about their fathers, because again, his father is Sabretooth. And as we all know, they don't have a good connection with one another. This man is trying his best to wipe out the mutant race because of his parents, Mystique and Sabretooth. And so while you do have Creed ask Sam about his father in the present day, for Sam it's kind of like, man, my dad was a great guy, but unfortunately he was always working. And with him always working, it led to him dying. But either way, him and I are very close to one another. And so for Graydon, he can't relate to Sam because again, him and Sabretooth are not close at all to one another. We do get a couple of pages where you do have Bobby Drake's father explain why he went after Graydon Creed for. And the reason why, because he was trying his best to protect his family. He kind of felt like when it came to Graydon, he was really trying to attack his family, come after his, but also other families across the nation. And so he had to be that one person to stand up against Graydon, which of course he did. And so you do have the story kind of shift over to the idea of Bobby saying goodbye to the X-Men. But before we're able to see, like, you know, Iceman leaving the team, we do see that for Graydon Creed, he used Mr. Drake as bait to pull other mutants to the hospital, because outside in the parking lot of the hospital, we do pick up with, well, Wolverine finding some guys who were plotting to attack the rest of the X-Men while they're inside the hospital. But now we have reached that point where we see Bobby Drake informing the X-Men that he will no longer be with them. Like, for right now, he needs to be with his father and mother, especially his father right now, as his dad is trying to recover. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.